It should have been 0, but it is now 1. Ben Zhou has just authorized the last transaction of the week. The transfer is taking an unusual amount of time to arrive. Zhou is not stressed out though. Everything seemed in order. Numbers matched, signatures were in place, the money should arrive any moment now. He checks the transaction panel. The money's still not there. He checks it again, and again, and again. Well, that's not good. Bybit's CFO is on the other end. He is losing it. Zhou can barely keep up through the mess of words and hyperventilation. But one sentence comes out loud and clear. The whole wallet has been drained. And then it hits him. He's just been robbed. Bybit, one of the largest cryptocurrency exchanges in the world, has been hacked. In just 3 minutes, $1.5 billion have disappeared from its reserves. As the global crypto market starts feeling the heat, millions of users are forced to watch their life savings vanish into the void. This is the story of how North Korea pulled off the biggest financial heist in history, after which there was no rollback. It was the summer of 2025. Kim Jong-un walked alongside, or perhaps more accurately, dragged his daughter through the coast of Wonsan. The North Korean regime was celebrating one of the biggest accomplishments of Kim Jong-un's career: their very first beach resort. Modern facilities, spas, restaurants, shopping malls, a theater, a recreation center, and even a cinema. A massive construction project nearly a decade in development for around $1 billion. Pretty impressive, especially for a country regarded as one of the poorest in the world. And even more impressive if we take into account North Korea's latest expenses, which includes ballistic missiles, military tests, and Kim's usual lavish lifestyle. The truth is, the math does not add up. North Korea should not have enough money to afford a $1 billion empty beach resort. But once you peel back the layers of the Korean onion, these bizarre spendings actually start making sense. You see, North Korea is not only famous for its rockets, it's also famous for its hacking. In fact, the country has been linked to one of the most destructive cyber attacks in history, WannaCry, a malware that affected more than 230,000 computers across over 150 countries. Now, the interesting thing here is that North Korea was not really planning to become a cyber menace. It just happened naturally. They learned hacking by embracing a strategy heavily focused on espionage and disruption. And in the process of learning, they became a powerhouse. They targeted governments, stole military secrets, collected blueprints, and attacked pretty much every institution under the sun. However, this strategy was still missing something important. North Korea was in desperate need for steady income, and while their strategy brought up indirect financial gains, for example, weakening adversaries and forcing them to negotiate, it also generated some hostility. You see, Western countries apparently did not respond well to a wave of aggressive cyber attacks and highly illegal nuclear programs. The result? North Korea was heavily sanctioned in 2017. During this time, even their usual collaborators, Russia and China, became more reluctant to support them. This completed a full circle. North Korea had originally started hacking to get some income. However, its magnanimous power aspirations had slightly derailed the plan. So they refocused their efforts toward the financial sector. It just makes sense. If you can hack a bank or any institution handling large amounts of money, you can probably get a few millions out of it. And while this approach brought some gains, North Korea quickly realized that bank heists would never become their breadwinner. First, banks are highly secure. This means that North Korea needs to invest several months into researching, preparing, and crafting customized malware for just one attack. On top of that, the prize is by no means guaranteed. No matter how much you steal, the money needs to be laundered. And the more you take, the more effort, time, and resources the process requires. For example, in 2016, they stole $81 million from the National Bank in Bangladesh. But they couldn't use the cash right away. They moved the money to the Philippines and spent months laundering it through casinos. This was clearly not sustainable. North Korea needed something more reliable. And that's when they discovered the secret sauce for financial success. In October 2017, an individual named Tony Walker decided to set up a cryptocurrency company. Tony Walker was, of course, just a pseudonym, but his ambition was very real. He wanted to revolutionize the boat industry, or at least that is more or less what he sold to others. His idea was simply that users could purchase a share of a boat in the form of digital currency. He gathered a team and started pitching the project. Investors began warming to the idea, and soon the initial target investment of $20 million did not seem so far-fetched. But in April of 2018, things went south. A Reddit user published some incriminating information about Tony Walker. He accused him of being a scammer, a North Korean scammer. This seemed rather intriguing. How could a North Korean be the CEO of an up-and-coming crypto startup? It was just bizarre. However, several months after the Reddit post, Tony Walker mysteriously disappeared, and with him, all the investors' money. Turns out the Reddit user was right. Tony Walker was not a real individual. He was a character, manufactured by North Korea. But let's be honest, this wasn't exactly groundbreaking. The crypto industry thrives on scams. North Korea was certainly not the first, nor will it be the last. The thing is, some of these scams are sometimes avoidable. Many companies in crypto, and honestly in general, rely on predatory tactics to collect sensitive information. From cookies to data trackers, they use sophisticated tools to gather information from almost every single website you visit, hoarding things like your health status, ID number, and even home address. Thankfully, tools like Incogni can help protect your personal data and reduce the risk of it falling into the wrong hands. And while it may not guarantee that your data disappears from the internet forever, Incogni can help reduce the risk of scams or identity theft as long as you're subscribed to the service. It can automatically track down your personal information and request its removal from data broker services or people search sites, making the process much easier than if you did it manually yourself. All you need to do is create an account, provide a minimal amount of information about yourself, and let the people at Incogni scour the internet to find and request the removal of your personal information. And if that's not enough for you, you also have the option to customize how your data is removed with their custom removals feature. You only need to submit the link where your personal information is exposed, and if the request is eligible, Incogni will have your personal information removed. If all of this sounds interesting, click the link in the description, use our code ROLLBACK, and get 60% off their annual plan. Incogni.com/rollback. Thank you, Incogni, for sponsoring today's video. Now, back to North Korea. Tony Walker symbolized something much bigger for North Korea: a rebirth. They realized a lot of people were interested in crypto, and apparently they were also willing to invest money, a ton of money. And if a relatively simple scam with a bit of social engineering could bring millions, what else could they achieve with their prolific cyber army? North Korea was willing to gamble, and they knew that the odds were in their favor. And at the end of the day, hacking cryptocurrency firms is pretty similar to bank heists, except it's decentralized and with significantly less security controls. Basically, it's heisting on easy mode. And to top it all off, in crypto, only the account owner controls the account and the wallet. That makes attribution incredibly challenging. We discussed this new strategy with Sofiya Sayankina, a researcher specializing in tech and sovereignty, who explained to us why this pivot was so important for North Korea.
There are probably two reasons why they kind of strayed away from these disruptive psychological impact campaigns. One is that they don't get any immediate returns from those campaigns like Dark Soul or paralyzing like South Korea's broadcasting stations, banks, and so on. Two, the sanctions that were placed on North Korea in 2017, I believe they halted like about 90% of the exports that North Korea used to trade like coal, wheat, and seafood, I believe. So basically, even though maybe the funds stolen from crypto assets aren't going directly to, for example, North Korea's nuclear program, they free up some of the existing funds that North Korea possesses. And this is the reason why they have switched towards this cryptocurrency hacks, because they do get immediate returns and they can use the cryptocurrency as they would like.
Naturally, this made Kim very much crypto curious. At first, North Korea started toying around with some South Korean exchanges. Here, the quantities were relatively modest, for example, 5 or 7 million. But things quickly escalated. By 2023, North Korea was already stealing $600 million. And a year later, this figure increased to almost $1.5 billion, especially because they started targeting bigger fish, such as DMM and WazirX, both very large cryptocurrency companies in Asia. North Korea consolidated 2 decades of hacking knowledge, and the results were impressive. In less than 4 years, their crypto squad managed to generate figures this country had never seen before. But now the question was, how far were they willing to push it? On the night of February 21st, Ben Zhou, CEO of the cryptocurrency exchange Bybit, received a call from his CFO. As soon as he picked up the phone, he understood that the transaction he had signed 30 minutes earlier had been hijacked. But the thing is, he still couldn't understand why this was such a big deal. Yes, a couple of millions had been lost, but Bybit was solvent enough to cover for those losses. But his CFO insisted that Bybit was in huge trouble. Zhou asked him to slow down. There were approximately 400,000 Ethereum in the wallet. That couldn't be that much, right? That was exactly when he understood why his CFO was on the verge of a mental breakdown. 400,000 Ethereum was worth $1.5 billion at the time. Covering a couple of millions in losses is one thing, but Zhou was not sure the company was solvent enough to take $1 billion hit. Zhou rushed to Bybit's headquarters to assess the damage. The team activated their crisis protocol, trying to determine whether this was a standalone incident or if the entire firm had been compromised. Luckily, only one wallet had been hijacked. Zhou then disclosed the incident on Twitter and quickly went live to pacify anxious customers. During the live stream, he ensured users that no further wallets had been compromised, and Bybit held $20 billion in reserves with a one-on-one asset backing policy, which essentially meant that their funds were backed and secured.
So no matter what, we will make sure all of the clients' money are safe.
However, this was not entirely true. The breach had reduced Bybit's reserve ratio to 92% of liabilities, raising concerns about its solvency. On top of that, users did not buy Zhou's carry on and stay calm message and initiated withdrawing their money from the firm. It's estimated that roughly 350,000 withdrawals were processed in just 12 hours, with approximately $4 to $10 billion pulled from the platform. Bybit did not have enough liquidity to deal with all this, so Zhou raced to borrow money from other firms and drew on corporate reserves to meet the surge of sudden requests. Meanwhile, the entire crypto market started feeling the heat. Ethereum, the primary asset handled by Bybit, dropped 7% within minutes of the breach before partially recovering. The panic eventually spread to other cryptocurrencies, wiping out around $75 billion in global crypto market value within 24 hours. All of that caused by a single heist. It was as if an office employee had stolen a couple of pens, and in the process, burned down the entire building with all the employees' belongings inside. The initial blow was pretty bad, but within a few days, the market began to stabilize. Zhou secured enough funding to cover the losses, and users slowly returned their money to the platform. Once it became clear that Bybit itself had not been compromised, nearly $4 billion was transferred back. Things were slowly returning to normal. However, the attack left a bad taste in everyone's mouth. How did $1 billion disappear just like that? 5 days after the heist, Bybit released a preliminary forensic analysis. The attack was traced back to one of its software providers, SafeWallet, a platform Bybit used to sign transactions, ironically, to make them more secure. On the very same day, SafeWallet posted a tweet where they confirmed Bybit's initial assessment. One of their developers had been compromised. For days, rumors online pointed to a certain, not very democracy-friendly country. The SafeWallet statement cemented what everybody else already suspected. Kim's cyber army was behind the hack. The same day, the FBI came out with its own statement. They also blamed North Korea, but specifically pointed to Trader, one of North Korea's cyber groups specializing in crypto theft. And while the Bybit hack may have seemed shocking because of the big bounty, what happened behind the scenes was just the usual North Korean crypto playbook. And to break it down, we joined forces with Geoff White, journalist and North Korean expert, who helped us better understand how this group worked to execute the attack.
The North Koreans went to the safe software provider and they found the software developers within that company. Now, the software developers obviously have a lot of power. They are working on the code. They effectively control kind of what the company does. The North Koreans managed to convince and trick one of those individuals at Safe, a software developer, to download some share trading app onto their computer. Their work computer was what this got onto. This gives the North Korean hackers access not just to Safe, but to the software that was running within Safe.
From there, attackers used stolen Amazon Web Service credentials to access the platform and move freely. This is the first and most crucial step in any attack. Hackers need to sneak in and act just as any worker would in order to remain undetected. However, this move almost spoiled Kim's squad mission. You see, Safe was called Safe for a reason, and it required a multi-factor reauthentication every 12 hours. The North Korean hackers thought they could cheat the system and register their own MFA, but the platform rejected all their attempts. Thankfully, the developer's active session did not expire, so the rest of the mission continued as planned. This created a sense of urgency, as they could be cut off at literally any minute. Then they moved on to the next stage of the operation, reconnaissance. This is a key stage for understanding the environment, and most importantly, executing the hack successfully. During this phase, they mapped the cloud infrastructure and collected key assets and identities. Here, they even adjusted their working hours to align with the developer's schedule to show that there was definitely nothing suspicious happening. Just another harmless crypto worker in the machine. But perhaps one of the most interesting things in this phase is that they did not instantly trigger the attack. They silently lurked in the server for 16 days. Unfortunately, we still don't know what exactly they did inside. On February 19th, they moved on to the final stage of the attack. They injected a malicious JavaScript code into Safe's website. These changes were made specifically to intercept and modify Bybit's transaction in real time. Let's dissect how that worked. When a transaction was initiated, the code checked whether the signer was an authorized Bybit signer. If it was, then it saved a copy of the legitimate transaction, replaced key details with malicious ones, and sent the fake transaction for approval. This is kind of a high school trick, just executed at a much larger scale. Think of it like this. You need your parents' signature to go on a trip, but you know they'll say no. So you take a document that already has your teacher's signature and show it to your parents. Seeing another adult's permission, they're more convinced and sign the document. And then you remove the teacher's signature and present it back. Now it looks legitimate to both sides, and you have full authorization to go. This is more or less what happened in the attack.
What the hackers did was presented those signatories, those three people, with a screen that looked exactly like the normal Safe screen that says, would you like to move this amount of money from this Bybit wallet to this Bybit wallet? And the three of them looked at the screen, checked the details, and clicked OK. But because the hackers had access to the software behind the Safe system, they were able to change what was going on in the background. So instead of moving a few million from one Bybit wallet to another Bybit wallet, the individuals were tricked into moving $1.5 billion worth of crypto from Bybit's wallet out onto the internet to the hacker's wallet. And that transfer took 2 minutes, 36 seconds.
The transactions were almost identical, except for a key difference. This is the real transaction, and this is the fake one. Do you see what's different? The operation value. In the legitimate transaction, it was set to 0, but in the fake one, it was set to 1. This tiny detail is what literally sealed the deal. It ensured that the transaction went to a malicious wallet instead of the original one. If Zhou or any of the signers had caught it, the hack would have failed. After the transfer, the hackers attempted to cover their tracks. They uploaded a clean version of the JavaScript to SafeWallet, hoping that the code would appear not so suspicious. However, it was a pretty sloppy job. Investigators quickly identified the changes by simply checking archived versions of the site on the Wayback Machine. This kind of lazy cleanup is another signature move from North Korea. They attempted to cover their tracks, but only partially. The truth is, they don't really care about being discovered. They're confident their attacks won't have any repercussions beyond a few angry statements and some incendiary headlines. Okay, so now we know who did it and how. However, there is still the $1.5 billion question on the table. What happened to the money? We've discussed earlier how, in heists, the most difficult part is not the theft itself, but cashing out. Crypto is no different. Yes, it's easier to bypass security, but guardrails are still there. On top of that, everything is public. So if you steal millions, or even billions, there's a good chance thousands of eyes will be watching in real time how you move the money around. This is a big problem, especially when the goal is to obscure the money trail.
The problem that Bybit thieves had was where to take the money, because you can't go with $1.5 billion worth of cryptocurrency to a big legitimate exchange and just say to them, hey, could I swap this cryptocurrency for pounds or dollars or whatever? That's not possible. For a start, they're going to ask you for your ID, for some information. And also, the cryptocurrency exchange you go to has to have $1.5 billion worth of dollars or pounds or yen or whatever it is. There's got to be a liquidity, as they call it, on the other side of the exchange. So the Bybit hackers faced a huge problem. But what was remarkable was the speed with which they surmounted that problem. Within days, they had washed that money through dozens and dozens of different cryptocurrency wallets, successfully moving it through and moving it further away from the traceable Bybit wallets.
This was done through a strategy called layering, which is a process to complicate tracing. It includes things like sending funds through large numbers of cryptocurrency wallets, moving funds to other blockchains, using cross-chain bridges or exchanges, switching between different crypto assets, and most importantly, mixers.
These are companies, organizations that will take in cryptocurrency, mix it around, as the name suggests, with other people's crypto, and then spit it out to a fresh wallet address. Now, for Bybit and for the police and the various investigators who are tracing the Bybit money, that's a big problem because suddenly the money just dropped into a black box. It's like taking a bucket of water to the top of a waterfall. You put the bucket of water in, at the bottom of the waterfall, you take a bucket of water out. But it's impossible to say whether the water you took out is the same as the water you put in at the top. That's how a mixer works.
Now you can see how complicated this can get. If you combine all these methods, what you get is a rapidly shifting trail that's extremely hard to follow. And when you add speed to the equation, well, you're basically screwed. In fact, a crypto researcher tried to track the money movement after the attack and noticed they were doing 2 to 3 transactions per minute, stopping every 45 minutes. That's a remarkable speed. Within 48 hours, at least 160 million had been funneled through illicit channels, with the total surpassing 200 million by February 23rd. 2 days later, that figure reached 400 million. And despite some attempts to freeze the funds, the attackers still managed to launder a big chunk of the booty. But North Korea had a bit of help with laundering. Some researchers believe the efficacy and speed of the Bybit operation may have been due to external collaborators, including Chinese intermediaries and over-the-counter brokers.
The other thing that the Bybit thieves did, which was incredibly astute, was they managed to find people who would then buy that cryptocurrency, which has been washed of much of a connection to the crime, buy it from them. There are loads of people around the world who are unable to get access to cryptocurrency. A lot of people in China, for example, banned from getting cryptocurrency, but they still want Bitcoin, they want Ethereum, they want Tether, and they're prepared to pay a little bit over the odds to get hold of it. That's where the Bybit thieves are believed to have taken the bulk of their money. They sold it on the open market to people who couldn't buy it through legitimate means. And we think that the vast majority of the Bybit money has now been laundered and lost. It's irrecoverable.
By August, a report by a company called Elliptic estimated that 1 billion of the stolen funds had already been laundered. In this report, they also highlighted a couple of interesting strategies that had been overlooked. For example, they suggested that the money was not always in control of North Korea, and that they probably used professional laundering services to speed up the process. Another interesting thing is that at times, the laundering even got creative. They exploited an interesting trick when their transactions got rejected. Basically, some firms have a refund policy where you can indicate which address to return your money back if the transaction fails. In this case, North Korea would indicate a different address to continue moving the money to different wallets. And this, folks, is how North Korea laundered the money. And yes, we are aware that we have not answered the question that we all want an answer to. Where did the money go? The truth is, we don't know. What we do know is that the final step of the laundering process was a firm by the name of Tron Blockchain. They chose this exchange firm because of its high liquidity, low fees, loose security, and especially close relationships with over-counter brokers. The These brokers are where hackers ultimately want all their crypto to end up, as they are responsible for swapping cryptocurrencies for fiat currency, allowing threat actors to finally cash out. And because this is a recent case, we don't really know how much money has been laundered and what part is still hidden in the intricate spiderweb of wallets. However, we know that North Korea ended 2025 with more than $2 billion in different crypto theft operations, the highest in history. In July of 2025, several Russian tourists were allowed to try the North Korean beach resort and document the experience. Wi-Fi was almost $2 per minute. A face massage was $15, and a replica of North Korea's intercontinental ballistic missile was priced at $465. You know, just in case you want to take a replica of Kim's favorite tool back home. By the time Russian tourists were welcomed, Kim's cyber team had probably laundered most of the money stolen from Bybit. Interestingly, it was more or less the same sum invested in the beach resort, which makes us wonder whether some of that money was invested in this project. At the end of the day, it was a historic investment. However, Geoff had a different idea of where the money may have gone.
The US government estimates that half North Korea's missile program is currently paid for by computer hacking. But those missiles and those nuclear weapons that North Korea is trying to develop, the materials for them don't exist a lot of the time in North Korea. You know, you need metal, you need fissile material, you need fuel. Well, North Korea's got to go out into the world to buy that. And the international community does not want that to happen. It's sanctioned North Korea. So the whole point of having these crypto raids, the accusation is that North Korea is using that money around the world to go to this country to buy the fuel, to go to that country to buy the metal, to blackmail or extort or bribe that individual to give them the insight and the knowledge they need to develop the missile. So the money's still ending up almost certainly in the military system, because that's what North Korea is largely reliant on, but that's happening globally around the world. It will also happen within North Korea, but what North Korea needs isn't in North Korea, it's out there in the world. It needs to get it.
So, perhaps North Korea's strategy is not funding lavish lifestyles or beach resorts. I mean, don't get us wrong, those things still need some funding, but they're not the ultimate goal of its cyber operations. The real objective is global liquidity. It's the same strategy they previously used with malware, but now the disruption has evolved into economic solvency to secure a seat at the negotiation table.
What North Korea's trying to do is have liquid money around the world. I think that's what North Korea wants. If it needs to buy ball bearings from a company in Argentina, it needs money in Argentina. If it's trying to pay someone to render up secrets in Germany and Frankfurt, it needs money in Germany so it can pay that individual. If it wants to bribe an official to let an export happen in Kuala Lumpur, it needs money there. So what North Korea wants, and what a lot of illicit operators want, is liquid global money that they can just use like a slush fund around the world. And that's why cryptocurrency is so useful, is because it doesn't sit in one bank in one territory. It's mobile, it's movable. You can move it into people's wallets. And if you do want to bribe somebody or blackmail somebody or pay somebody off, well, you can effectively give them a slip of paper that's got the wallet address on it and the password or the seed phrase, and give it to them and say, that's $1 million right there. A piece of paper can be worth $1 million because it got the cryptocurrency wallet address on it. And so for people who are trying to do this kind of illicit finance job, having crypto global and accessible and liquid is really important.
But perhaps the most fascinating takeaway of this story is that North Korea has learned to operate flawlessly on both cybercrime and traditional crime. This combination not only leverages geopolitical power, but also generates enough income to fund almost anything their socialist dreams can think of. Beach resorts, imports, missiles. North Korea has found a way to keep the money coming in. And it looks like the green flow is not stopping anytime soon.
We are seeing an increasingly fractured world. I mean, the headlines as we talk are all about Iran. The US has taken action against Venezuela. We are starting to see China move in some interesting directions. And so for a sanctioned entity like North Korea, I would argue that there are more and more avenues through which it can work. There are lots and lots of states now that increasingly are wondering whether they should play ball with the rules and whose rules they should play ball with. In addition, we've got a large and growing international organized crime operation, which is increasingly wealthy that they can work with as well. So if you're putting yourself in a position of a sanctioned country like North Korea, I think the future, unfortunately, could be rather rosy for them.
We hope you enjoyed this video. Let us know if you'd like us to cover more North Korean operations or explore other interesting cyber heists in history. And before you leave, don't forget to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next one.